Hello, welcome to Season 12, Episode 9 of Unlimited Opinions. I'm Adam Bishop,
I'm Mark Bishop.
and we are, of course, reading Allan Bloom's The Closing of the American Mind, this time discussing his chapter on culture, very much continuing from last time. We had that big, long quote at the end discussing, what exactly is culture, and that's sort of the focus of this chapter. Really interesting one, not too long, so might not be the longest episode, but I thought it was a really interesting chapter. What did you think?
Yes.
Yes? No other thoughts?
Yes, and I expect this will be a short
Hmm.
episode, it's a short chapter, but the next one's a bit longer.
Right.
And you just woke up from a nap, so
An unintentional nap.
I don't want to overtax you at this point.
Yes, well, it wouldn't be overtaxing.
Oh, you have super brain power. Yes, I enjoyed this chapter. It really was, like you said, a continuation of the previous ones, which you
Right.
expect in a book. That's why they're numbered and in order in which they appear. But anywho, for all you potential authors out there,
Yes, you remember that's how books work. Is
put them in some
yes,
sort of logical order.
yes. Thank you for that. But yeah, he starts off because he says, it springs off of this nature society tension. Talking about culture, he says it seems to mean something high, profound, respectable, a thing before which we bow. It joins nature as a standard for the judgment of men and their deeds, but has even greater dignity. It is almost never used pejoratively, as our society, state, nation, or even civilization, terms for which culture is gradually substituted or whose legitimacy is underwritten by culture. Culture is the unity of man's brutish nature and all the arts and sciences he acquired in his movement from the state of nature to civil society. So you have this idea, I think he's kind of putting forward, like culture is this really all-encompassing thing about what man is in a particular, sort of culture, sort of society, and everything that makes that society that society.
Yes, and I think this definition is a little out of date with
Mm,
common usage of the word culture. Like with the cultural appropriation and
right.
this and that, which wasn't as prominent back when he was writing this.
Hmm.
It was like back then it was like you're cultured. There's something more about you. Because you know about these profound and respectable things. It's highbrow
Right.
type of concept as opposed to just whatever it is the group prefers.
Hmm.
And back, the term as he's defining it is you just read is something you aspire to, I guess. And I was kind of confused a couple of times about when I'm reading it. Was he stating his opinion or his position on it, or was he describing what other people or the culture is
Right.
defining these terms? I was kind of like, wait a second, is because some of the stuff I 100% agree with, and I don't know that he was. I don't know what his if he was taking a position or if he's
Hmm.
just reciting, like he talks about Kant initially,
Right.
the term culture, and he says at the end of that last paragraph in 185, the moral demand is merely an abstract ideal. If it asks for what nature cannot give, brutish selfishness would be preferable to sham morality. That's
Right.
the Kant thing. Kant,
Kant. Kant.
Kant. Um, that that people act like they're moral, or because they want to be perceived as moral, and so
Right.
they think everything's right or wrong or whatever.
Right. Yeah,
Uh,
because he says it was first used by Kant, who was thinking of Rousseau when he employed it, particularly about what Rousseau said of the bourgeois. So he's just kind of dismissing it as this sort of fake notion that culture is just this weird abstract ideal to give yourself morality in a way, and actually just being in the state of nature is a little bit more honest than having this sort of fake thing called culture that you listen to and sort of base your life around. So yeah, it's hard to tell what exactly he's like critiquing. What he's saying like is his own opinion. I agree.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, well, do you agree with this, or you disagree with it, or are you just saying what other people are? Is he leading to something? But I did like, again, I don't know if this is his position, but I think it is.
Hmm.
On 180, he talks about the untamed desire
Right.
and that's natural and like if you're going to be a moral person, maybe you have to tame that desire or whatever. But
Right.
he has a defense of marriage
Mm-hmm.
that goes on. It's a really long, I'm not going to read it, but it's a long paragraph on 186, which I think is one of the better intellectual defenses of, you know, of why you would get married, why you stay married, why you stay
Right.
loyal. In the middle of it, he says the exclusive preference for one person whose attraction is founded on ideas of beauty and virtue unknown to natural man makes sex sublime and sublimates it.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes on from that. I mean, that's, I just think that it was just really a beautiful description of why you would get married, you know, to
Mm-hmm.
one person. Why would you make those sacrifices? You know, why would you restrain, you know,
Right.
desires to go off and do whatever you want with whatever number of partners that you want? So
Mm-hmm.
I really liked it. I mean,
Right.
I thought it was important to understand that if you're doing that, if you're getting married, this is actually the goal of, you know, what you're supposed to be doing, I think, which is you've got to make a choice both outwardly and inwardly to be
Mm-hmm.
loyal to that relationship and to control your base desires
Right.
to go out and fornicate at will. You know?
Yeah, because I like what he says. I like what he says a little bit earlier. He says marriage constrains both parties, and faithless deeds as well as desires habitually accompany it. In spite of all of society's machinery, untamed desire is always there. It is natural, can be pushed down, but never completely, and it always has its revenge in one way or another. So I think there he's a little more cynical about human nature, but he's saying no, it's this good thing that we have that's enforced by culture. That you can do things, we can put things in place in cultures that you know take priority. It's the reason over the will there, right? It's like recognizing, well, there's something better about this cultural institution, rather than just following whatever our desires are, because we see that there's better outcomes for our children, for ourselves, and we're pursuing
Yes.
something better than just our desires. Yeah, I thought that was really good.
And for society. You know,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
can't have, you really can't have a functioning society without this. It's
Hmm.
just mayhem. And we're at the mayhem stage of the breakdown of the concept of a devoted married couple.
You're right.
Well, like I'm 55, and there's not a whole lot of people that I knew in my 20s that are still married now. Now, I
Right.
think I have more friends that are still married than other people, but
Hmm.
I think people who have friends who are married tend to get divorced less than people who have close friends that get divorced.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that's because you have the same values or because I think divorce is contagious, quite frankly. I think
Yeah.
it's like a moral plague or
Hmm.
something.
That's Tolkien actually has a letter almost exactly about that, talking about divorce and things like that, and about how we should be more strict as a society in sort of condemning divorce. Because he says, I agree there are situations where it's necessary for the wife to leave the husband or the husband to leave the wife because of abuse or things like that. But if we just have this widespread encouragement of it, well, then it's just going to be everywhere, right? And then all of a sudden, you just don't have marriage anymore at all. What's the point of this thing, right? And we've kind of lost that idea of the subordination of the will there.
I've come I think I've come to the conclusion that I don't think we should, well, I mean, I guess it's the moral and the religious side of it, but like as a society, I guess, as a pluralistic society, I don't know that it's productive to try to restrict divorce or to try to stop divorce because there's nowadays more than ever there's reasons to get divorced,
Right.
fidelity and abuse or whatever, both sides. I just think that it should be acknowledged by everyone that when you get divorced, it's a failure. You
Hmm.
failed at it, and I don't think that is stressed enough
Right.
because you either failed in selecting the wrong partner
Hmm.
or you failed in not being loyal or being a good husband or a wife.
Right.
Or a combination of both.
Hmm.
But if more people acknowledge that is a bad thing
Yeah.
that they made those mistakes. I
Hmm.
mean, everybody makes mistakes. I'm
Hmm.
not saying they should be condemned to hell or anything crazy like that. But I think like especially when you meet people that have had two or three divorces,
Right.
uh, I think there should be shame.
Yeah.
I think if you're in your third divorce, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah. I think it's you've lost a sense of the purpose of things, right? Because it's like now you just treat it well as every outcome is equal to the others. You know, divorce is just as natural of an outcome in marriage as just keeping the marriage your entire life. Well, that just happens to some of them. And you need a better recognition. Although that's not what's supposed to happen. There is a targeted goal for marriage. It's not to end the thing. That is a failure of marriage. Yeah, I think you're right.
You see people like celebrating divorces, happy divorce,
Yeah.
whatever. It's like, no, that's
People getting cakes and stuff. I've seen clips of that. It's like that's just so perverse. Like I can see like seeing a sense of relief if you're getting out of a really bad situation, but if it's just a thing where it's like I just don't like this person anymore. Look
yeah,
at me. I'm so happy to be back. Able to date people again. Because I think that's the tone that a lot of them take. Is like,
right.
yeah, I'm finally free again to do whatever I want. I was like, that's just really really weird, really creepy, actually.
Yes. Anywho, so where are we at next?
Well, I'll say on 187, because he says, what's the relation between Kant's use of the term and ours? And he
Yeah.
says that there are two different current uses. And I think this is a good point. He says, first, culture is almost identical to people or nation, as in French culture, German culture, Iranian culture, etc. Second, culture refers to art, music, literature, educational, television, certain kinds of movies, in short, everything that is uplifting and edifying, as opposed to commerce. The link
Yes.
is that culture is what makes possible, on a high level, the rich social life that constitutes a people, their customs, styles, tastes, festivals, rituals, gods, all that binds individuals into a group with roots, a community in which they think and will generally, with the people, a moral unity, and the individual united within himself.
Yes.
See, the sense is just sort of what is a people that is sort of equal to their culture, but then it's also sort of the highest parts of the given people's customs and things like that. The
Yes.
higher part of their life, the more edifying, and that is what the culture is.
I had a discussion with your mother, and well, I don't think they're good. So there's a person that we know that was really proud of what do you call it, lederhosen outfit
Oh.
at an Oktoberfest
Hmm.
celebration in St. Charles. Okay, St. Charles Riverfront Oktoberfest is about as kitschy. I mean, it's fun. I've been to it a couple times.
Sure.
Huge crowds, lots of beer in little plastic steins, like little
Mm,
12-ounce plastic mugs that
right.
would almost appear to be a glass stein, but it's not. It's plastic.
Yes.
The whole thing is plastic, and they have
Yes.
a ball band or a polka
Hmm.
band. It's a big event.
Hmm.
Some people dress up,
Right.
like in the lederhosen.
Hmm.
And this person was emphasizing, the authentic cultural
Yes.
lederhosen at this event, and how they're of that uh, culture. Because her family is originally from Austria or whatever.
Right.
And I was like, we were talking about it yesterday. That's just not the thing.
Hmm.
Okay, if you're doing that and you're in Bavaria,
Right.
but even if you're doing that at the Munich Oktoberfest, which is now super commercial, I've never been there. It's like one of
Right.
the things I'd love to do, like on my bucket list, just because of the spectacle of it.
Hmm.
But yeah, and I mean, I don't think in St. Charles, Missouri riverfront, drinking beer out of plastic mug,
Yeah.
wearing lederhosen that you got off the internet is really cultural.
Yeah. No, it's
So
this
I think
weird
that's
approximation of
yeah.
it. Yeah.
I think that's what he's that my example is that's the point he's making. I think is that it's
Hmm.
not just about commerce. It's not
Right.
it's not about the Mexican American fair at the local park where
Right.
people are sombreros made in China
Hmm.
and that kind of stuff, or whatever it may be. That's not really based in that community and has been in the community for a long time, or is
Right.
art, or some deeper.
Right.
It's more of just, it's kind of like a club, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, speaking of Oktoberfest, this is only kind of related. But last year, I don't know if I've told you this story, but there's a really, really great Oktoberfest in the Audi car dealership parking lot here in Gainesville. For some
Nice.
reason, yes, for some reason, this Audi dealership has like a really close relationship with like the German, parent company, being a German band. They flew out like an authentic German band, like from Germany, They had like actual German food, like not just like, bratwurst, in a cart somewhere, but like a
Yeah.
full buffet of things like that, like full glass giant steins, not the plastic stuff. It was
Nice.
weirdly one of the most authentic Oktoberfests I think I've ever seen in my life, and it was in the Audi dealership parking lot. It was
In
really
Gainesville, Florida.
in Gainesville, Florida. It was a really good time, but it was really, really strange.
Maybe I need to send you some lederhosen. It'd be more authentic. I don't know if you could pass for an Austrian, but
I don't think I could. I don't know if I'm the type.
hmm. Oh, you have some German heritage. You're on your mom's
That
side.
is true. That is true. So you
Well,
couldn't, but I could
yeah. Well, I
potentially.
could probably pretend.
Yes,
Yeah.
you could get the lederhosen off of Amazon and the
That
plastic
is true.
steins. Yeah. But I do like what he says going back to the book there. He says culture as art is the peak expression of man's creativity, his capacity to break out of nature's narrow bonds, and hence out of the degrading interpretation of man in modern natural and political science. Culture founds the dignity of man. Culture is a form of community, is the fabric of relations in which the self finds its diverse and elaborate expression. So I kind of agree and disagree with him there. I don't think culture is what founds the dignity of man. I think that comes before culture. But I think he is right that it is it is that pattern of relations that you engage with like all of society, right? It's like all of these all-encompassing things that are part of this sort of ambiguous term, and that's sort of how you participate in societies is through culture.
Yeah, I think it's like a foundation.
Yeah,
I don't think it's the source. So
right,
I think maybe his word usage overstates it. Uh, I don't, so I don't know that he really intended to say that it's the
right, sure.
source, but tomato, tomato.
Hmm.
Um, I really liked his discussion of the concept of the duality between
Hmm.
these two, different concepts of culture.
Hmm.
Like this commercial one as opposed to this,
Right,
highbrow, deep meaning one. And I think he's right. I mean, there's a struggle between
hmm,
the two, and he really gets it. I'm always wanting to skip ahead,
right.
um, but at the very end, I guess I won't skip ahead.
Hmm.
But I do like
His treatment of
this.
politics is really
Yeah.
interesting. I don't know if you were going to touch on that, but I wanted to mention that as well. That's
Mhm.
on 188 and 189. So I don't
Oh
know if
yeah,
you're
yeah,
if you're
yeah.
farther ahead.
Yeah, it was on 189. I wanted to say something.
Sure, go ahead.
I love this quote. He's talking about the social contract theory, and I think this
Yes.
is 189, where he says individual self-interest is not sufficient to establish a
Mm,
common good. He insists. He's talking about Rousseau, I think. Yeah.
mhm, yeah.
But without it, political life is impossible, and men will be morally contemptible. The founder of a regime must first make a people to which the regime will belong. A people will not automatically result from individual men's enlightenment about their self-interest. A political deed is necessary. And then he has a long quote from Rousseau.
Right.
I think that's 100% true,
Hmm.
although he's talking about trying to make a people,
Right.
like manipulate them, and I don't think you can. I mean, I guess multi-generational, if you really have a sustained effort, I guess you
Hmm.
could. But I think like if you think about like previous chapter with Orestes Bronson,
Right.
yeah,
Mhm.
where
Yeah, yeah.
he was talking about like it's of the people, and there's a nation that is created by the sum total of their interests and their
Hmm.
their beliefs and their desires and values.
Right.
And so I think Rousseau's right about that. It's not just a contract theory that
Yeah.
Locke or the others were talking about. An agreement. This it's not all rational.
Hmm.
It's there's something more to that. It's a nation.
Right. I think that, yeah, I think with the Bronson and then Russell Kirk, I think also takes that point, probably from Orestes Bronson, where it's like, well, the American people existed as a people before, the Declaration of Independence, right? The nation sort of more broadly speaking, started well before 1776, right? That people had to develop first, right? It's not just some document that you pass that like, oh, all of a sudden we're a people now, we have common interests because this document said so, or because this, written contract said so, or this unwritten contract said so. It's like that has to develop naturally. The culture, I think, definitely comes first before you have, any sort of written declaration that this is so.
Yes. And now getting back to what you wanted to talk
Yes,
about.
'cause I think that's his point with the
Yes.
the the politics too, because he says, back in the day, you didn't have this sharp divide between politics and culture. Now we think of them as two entirely separate things, and they
Yes.
should either sometimes stay away from each other or sometimes influence the other. But he makes the really good point about Pericles' funeral oration, right? That's this classic in Thucydides, where he says, we read that and we're like, oh, it's this beautiful description of Greek culture. But Pericles doesn't talk about, as he mentioned, he says nothing about the gods or the poetry, history, sculpture, philosophy of which we think. He praises Athens' regime and finds beauty in its political achievement, its regime, and particularly its tyrannically held empire, right? And he says, this is this example of Greek culture that we think about it. Well, it's really Greek politics, and those things weren't these two entirely separate concepts as we think of them now. And I think that's really the right way to think about it, is that politics is absolutely part of a place's culture, and you can't just draw a sharp line between which is the other. Because now you have, the debate is always like, well, is politics downstream of culture, or is culture downstream of politics? So I think they're entirely wrapped up with each other. You can't say, well, this one's over here, this one's over there.
Yeah, and this predates one of the heroes of my lifetime, unsung heroes, which is Andrew Breitbart. He was way ahead of his time. He died young, relatively young, but he was the one that really pushed the politics is downstream of culture. You
Right.
have to get into the arts. You have to get into the TV, screenwriting. You have to get into all that. Now, and I agree with you that it's not really downstream, but he would agree with you that it's just part of politics, and that's really what the point of this author is making. Because back when this was written, it was before Breitbart was a thing, and it was culture was considered separate, completely separate. Like it was the culture wars. Well, you're not
Right.
supposed to talk about that in politics. You get your values out of my
Right.
government type of thing.
The government's about the economy and the strict passing of bills and stuff like that. It doesn't have anything to do with that sort of stuff.
Right, or constitutional principles,
Right, right.
in the abstract, as opposed to what do we really want to achieve here. So, yeah, no.
Well, I think you're seeing that now with this. Have you seen all the stuff about Cracker Barrel that's popping up everywhere? Which I think is kind of ridiculous a little bit, but I think is on this point where it's like people are realizing, well, all of this stuff is very much connected to politics. Which you have this ridiculous, really pretty awful. I mean, I think it's a very bad rebranding of Cracker Barrel. They just completely toned down the logo. They stripped a lot of the sort of Americana stuff on the walls that that they're where these changes have taken place. And I have all these.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
They're talking about getting rid of the stores, the little shop.
Oh, really? That too? I didn't hear about that. Yeah.
It's like a loss leader.
Yeah, because now you're seeing like these conservative activists like Chris Rufo, who's getting like all involved in this, and like this is this product of this and this and this, and it's like, well, I think it's a little overblown, some of the reaction to it, but I think it's a good point where it's like, well, this is a brand, and granted, it's kind of an exaggeration of something, but it's a brand that was about Americana and sort of the Southern feeling and things like that. When you strip that away, you're losing something that celebrated America. And so like it's good to, I think, have a little bit of pushback against that. But I don't know if some people are taking it a little bit too seriously. I don't know.
Well, if I remember correctly, Rufo was aware of them a couple of years ago or a year ago when the CEO was making these. They had like a Rainbow Day,
Right.
The rainbow, maybe rocking chairs or something out front. It was they're really pushing that culture into one of these bastions of Americana, and like, you go into a Cracker Barrel, you should expect to be able to find an American flag cap or
Right.
or t-shirt, and gospel music. Interest in I mean, I'm okay with a cap and all that, but I'm not interested in gospel. But there's certain things that you expect in there, and they're trying to destroy it on purpose. And I think it's exactly the same thing as Bud Light. They have a contempt for their customers, and they have a contempt for America, and they've had declining sales. Like I haven't eaten there in a long time
Yeah.
because their food's not great. And it used to be better.
Yeah.
I don't know what changed, or maybe I changed. I don't know, but I'm all for flapjacks and like biscuits and gravy. That's not my thing, but their food's like bland. It's like hospital food. That was really the problem. Also, they're changing like the chairs into booths. I think that'd be fantastic because they're uncomfortable.
Right.
I'm all about the padded booths. So I think they could have changed and updated the decor without changing. I think they're trying to change the values of it. That's just so stupid, and it's so hostile.
Right. Because
And
if you've seen the like the pictures of the remodeled ones, it's like the same like plain millennial beige walls, and they have like some of the decorations, but it's like all like kind of cordoned off, and it's just like it feels like every other restaurant to ever exist. Now it's lost something of what it was.
well, I could already go to Denny's. I
That's
like, you know, I
that's
like
true.
Denny's.
Yeah.
Denny's is great. Denny's is great for Denny's. Now I knew that, and I've been to Denny's fairly recently. Like if I really want to go off my diet, I can get a big thing of pancakes and everything in the middle of the day, anytime.
Right.
I can
Right.
get pancakes there, and I know they're going to be the same any Denny's. They're going to be great, but they'll be pretty good. They'll be a diet buster, but but it's a different market, similar
Right.
market, different than Cracker Barrel. Cracker Barrel is like the Cracker Barrel is where you need or an aunt or uncle, or just it's more of a it was more of a gathering place.
Right.
And the most recent thing that I saw today, I don't know if it's true, but maybe it is, like that triangle.
Yeah,
Like
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
they have like if you leave too many of them, it would say in there like you're stupid or something.
Yeah.
If,
It's like
like
if you leave three, you're a moron. If you leave
yes, yeah,
four, you're an ignoramus,
yeah,
right? And
it's spelled funny,
yeah,
and it's Southern culture just being silly.
right.
They're changing that because I guess people get their feelings. Nobody got their feelings hurt.
Right.
It's
Yeah,
fun.
because I saw it now. It's like if you have one left, congratulations, you win. You're really smart. If you have two, don't worry, try again. If you leave three, don't feel embarrassed. There's always like room to improve or something like that. And it's like
That's
you've just
not
drained it of like everything that was interesting about it.
yes, yeah. Because we were there, and like I've been there. I'm like, I got like four left. How did I do that? I am an ignoramus. I mean, it's funny. It's like, oh,
Right.
then everybody teases you at the table. It's good natured. So but those kind of cultural things, they're trying to destroy it systematically,
Hmm.
and besides from being just, I think it's hostile. So that's why I
Hmm.
think why it's important.
Right.
Companies make risky moves all the time, and they make branding moves that may work, or like Coke had New Coke when I was your age or
Yeah.
younger, and that flamed out. Nobody wanted to change the formula or whatever. Now they have like 10 different types of Coke,
Yeah, that's true.
and but and so that's okay. But, like Bud Light being Bud Light, Bud Light even having the trans do was okay. I mean, I don't
Hmm.
like it, but when there's the coupled with the interview of the advertising executive showing contempt for the 55-year-old now 50-year-old former frat guys. I was never in
Hmm.
a frat, but like when we were in college, Bud Light was the universal beer
Right.
because it's everything everybody would just agree on. It was the standard. You'd have you go to any barbecue, you know, until that happened, you'd always have a cooler of Bud Light, and then you'd have like a second cooler of more interesting beers
Right.
or beers that you knew somebody in particular wanted or whatever, like your Uncle Bucky.
Yeah.
But you'd have the Bud Light. It was the
Hmm.
standard.
Right.
Nobody loved it. Nobody was, but it was okay. Well, if you're going to a barbecue, there's gonna be a Bud Light there,
Hmm.
and then they just showed such contempt for me and everybody like me. It's like, okay, no, I'm not
Yeah.
going to do it. And now I'm drinking Yangling. I,
Yeah.
I, I literally will not drink a Bud Light. I just won't
Yeah.
do it. I don't even like drinking Budweiser. The whole family, I won't drink any of it.
Yeah.
And I know it's irrational. I know it doesn't make any difference, but it's cultural.
Yeah.
When you insult me, when you hate me,
Hmm.
I just check out.
Yeah. And it is such a shame too, because I mean Budweiser's, headquartered in St. Louis.
It is
Right?
not.
Oh, well, we have the big brewery there.
Well, there is a brewery there.
Yes.
They were bought out by a Belgian company.
That's right. Yeah.
It's an international company based out of Belgium, and they manufacture Modelo, which is their number one beer.
Right. Right.
It hasn't been a St. Louis-based company. It was Anheuser InBev, and now I guess it's InBev, and their entire culture changed.
Right.
So it's an international company, and they do employ a lot of people locally, and
Right.
it's too bad. But but Schlafly's employs a bunch of people. You know,
Yeah. They're-
uh, a bunch of other companies employ a bunch of people, and I don't think they hate us, but
Yeah.
maybe they do. At least they're quiet about it. You don't have to brag about hate me.
Hmm. That's
But
true.
it's a cult, I think it's
Yeah.
part of the culture.
No, I agree.
We have to have, because, like, I have my political views but I'm not out there antagonizing customers or clients or
Right.
that kind of stuff. It's like, what are you doing?
Right. Yeah.
Continue.
Yes, to go back to the book, because then he makes the really good point, right? This is on 190 of like where, the sort of the emphasis on culture goes wrong, right? And
Yes.
he says this is kind of coming from Rousseau here, where it's like you have this shift, in history where all of a sudden you're not as concerned about the nature of man, right? You're more concerned about the culture of man, right? Culture, which is changeable, which is mutable, right? Which varies depending on your region. He says, yeah, man is a culture being, not a natural being. What man has from nature is nothing compared to what he has acquired from culture. A culture, like the language that accompanies and expresses it, is a set of mere accidents that add up to a coherent meaning constitutive of man. Right? He says, really, if you want to know what a human is, you just study the culture. Right? There's no sort of inherent nature. There's no sort of purpose for humanity. It's just these different cultural, differences. These sort of values that people have, and that's what a human is, and that's what you need to study if you want to find out about humanity. He says
I'm
that's a
going to
big
go
problem.
Yes, I'm going to go back a couple
Yeah.
lines. I think
Oh
this is
wow.
where he says, changing human nature seems brutal, nasty. It seems a brutal, nasty, tyrannical thing to do. Instead, it began to be denied there was such a thing as human nature.
Mm,
That's where he's talking about, you just deny that there's anything that is pre-existing about you. And so, well, that's not human nature. That's just the culture. We'll just change the culture. Just,
hmm.
because I'm not changing who you are. I'm just going to change all your beliefs and
Yeah.
values. Or
Yeah.
else
Yeah. Because that's what he says. He
that's
says,
not tyrannical.
yeah, no, not tyrannical at all. 'Cause he says the reason for this, he says Rousseau, as opposed to Hobbes and Locke, he says, they had the same universal goal was to secure the equal natural rights of all men within civil society, but Hobbes and Locke did not succeed in doing so because self-interest is not enough to found political morality on. So you have to have this concept of culture, this thing that you can change to enforce this sort of, equitable goal here. That has to be something more than just common, self-interest. There's this other thing, right, which might have some basis in reality, but whoever's in charge can kind of shift that thing and change that thing. And don't worry about human nature, right? It's worried just about culture, and whoever's in charge can have a lot of influence on that.
Yep. And then he talks about uh, the idea that we have certain cultural values, but
Hmm.
then when we try to impose it on somebody else, like America tries to say, well, you have a constitutional right to religious freedom in some other land, then it's like, oh, wait, you're imposing your values on some other culture. You can't do that. Well, wait a second, but that's our values.
Right.
And so he recognizes then,
Hmm.
how dangerous that is. It's like it doesn't make any sense. It's contradictory
Right.
to believe that we should have a culture,
Hmm.
but then we can't actually enforce it. We can't actually
Right.
follow that. Somehow we're criticized for saying, well, that's our culture.
Right. I like what he says because it's like whatever you do, you're kind of screwed. Because he says sometimes the United States is attacked for failing to promote human rights, sometimes for wanting to impose, quote, the American way of life on all people without respect for their cultures. To the extent that it does the latter, the United States does so in the name of self-evident truths that apply to the good of all men. But its critics argue that there are no such truths, that they are prejudices of American culture. On the other hand, the Ayatollah was initially supported by some here because he represented true Iranian culture. Now he's attacked for violating human rights. What he does is in the name of Islam. His critics insist that there are universal principles that limit the rights of Islam. So it's like no matter what you do, it's like, well, I want to go help these people. I want to bring them better values to their country. Well, that's cultural imperialism, I think is like one of the new terms they have for that. Okay, well, we'll stay out of that. We won't bother with that. Okay, well, now you're not protecting human rights, right? It's like you can't, either way, no matter what you do, you're infringing on someone else's culture or you're not doing enough to promote, basic human rights. It's this weird, weird problem that in
Really,
modern society.
yeah.
Yeah. It's
I'd say
very
I'd
funny
just
though.
ignore them.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And so right now, it seems like the American foreign policy is we're not imposing our culture. If
Right.
there's a tyrannical government, we're just going to deal with them.
Right.
And so I think that side, which is just, I guess, realism, I guess they call that, is a way not to have this debate about whether we should, what values of ours should we impose?
Right.
having a George Floyd mural in downtown, whatever, Afghanistan, or rainbow flags in Islamist countries is,
Right.
it's trying to impose it, but it just really
Right.
making a mockery of our power because we're having no
Right.
effect. So we might as well not even try. Either do it or don't do it.
Right. Right. But then to kind of end the chapter, this is where he gets into the more like, economic, sort of very superficial idea of culture that you were referencing earlier. Because he says, this is bottom 192, he says, this attempt to preserve old cultures in the New World is superficial because it ignores the fact that real differences among men are based on real differences in fundamental beliefs about good and evil, about what is highest, about God. Differences of dress or food are either of no interest or are secondary expressions of deeper beliefs. The quote ethnic differences we see in the United States are but decaying reminiscences of old differences that caused our ancestors to kill one another,
Yeah.
right? Because now when you hear about culture diversity, it's all about the good things that people can bring to the country. It's the food, their dress, their music, things like that. And it's like all of these things that are so much more superficial than the actual differences between cultures, and that's really in the highest values that they have, and that's not something that's boiled down to what kind of dish they like for dinner, right? That's a very secondary issue in cultural discussions. Yeah.
I don't like how and then he moves on in a similar vein, but I really like this quote where he's talking about our current concept of culture and how
Right.
it's separated from that morality or that religion. He says the idea of culture was established in an attempt to find the dignity of man within the context of modern science.
Hmm.
It's some sort of mathematical equation that you can divine without having any divinity.
Hmm.
And he goes on about the dignity of man and how that's affected and he says in general everyone wants to be scientific and at the same time to respect the dignity of man. So it's one or the other. I mean, you can be scientific, but it's not all scientific. It's
Right.
not all science all the way down. There has to be some sort of unbreakable moral code
Right.
this is part of my pet theory about the importance of the desecration of man.
Right.
He's right along that, or we forget we have souls. We
Yeah.
deny we have souls. And it's all science and reason, and the culture is you can be a cultured person if you know the symphonies and you know all these
Right.
highfalutin things. Well, that's great, and I think that really can improve you,
Hmm.
a person, and your cultural sensitivity, your intellectual um, capacity, but it doesn't make you a better person.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think he makes a really good point there. It's like, well, culture is a real thing, but it's not defining of our value, right? And I think he's right that that's culture's real, but there's more to it than a lot of people think. And sort of the scientific impulse is just to find these very easily measurable differences between people and say, well, people are valuable because they have these differences, right? Like
Yeah.
these people cook their bread in this country differently than the people cook their bread in this other country. Look, that's a difference in culture. We have to protect all of these cultures. Well, it's like, well, that's not the biggest difference between these people, right? There's much more to it than that. And it's really, if you want something that's common to all people, it's something that you can't really just measure, scientifically. It's something much different than that.
And I think is a sidetrack I'll go off on. I think that's
Sure.
also why people get so upset about IQ tests and intellectual capacity because they believe that if you're smart, if somebody says I'm smarter than you, they think that's a moral judgment about their worth as a human because they don't have a religious belief that we're all of
Right.
equal value in the eyes of God. And so, like IQ testing or even some opposition to competency examinations for hiring or promotion or
Right.
whatever are really frowned upon because they feel like it's a moral judgment saying that they're different and
Hmm.
they don't have the capacity to do the job. And that's a moral judgment. Well, it's not really a moral judgment. It's just you don't have the ability to do the job. You have to be smart to be an airline pilot. There's a lot of moving parts of that
Right.
thing. You have to be able to think quickly and do math in your head
Right.
sometimes. The instruments don't work. You have to know all that stuff. And you can't do that if you're dumb, you
Right.
know? And
Yeah.
it's not saying you're a bad person. It's just you're not going to be able to do that thing.
Yeah.
It's like
This is
you can't be a center in the NBA if you're 5 foot tall.
right.
That's just life.
Right. This is kind of another tangent, but on the IQ test point, I saw this clip. I think it was earlier today. Of those stupid shows where they bring together five kind of ridiculous people, and it's like rank yourselves by
Oh,
how smart you are, how smart you all think you are, how pretty you all think you are, and you have other people rank or whatever. And the theme of this one was like rank yourselves based on how smart you think you are, and then you all take an IQ test, and then we'll show how quote unquote smart you really are. And one of the big problems that I think is happening today is the sort of equation with, well, the higher degree you have, therefore inherently the smarter you are. And you had this one person who has a PhD in cancer biology or something like that, which sounds like a very impressive field, and I'm sure is doing very important research. And she's just absolutely talking so down to this guy who was just a high school graduate, but was doing some sort of blue collar job. She's like, well, clearly, I have to be smarter. I'm in this field. I have a PhD. And then, of course, it turns out that when he took the IQ test, he scored, significantly higher than she did. Right. And it's like, now you have this equation. Well, intelligence is just how many degrees you have or how many, technical terms you know about this one particular topic. And that's not necessarily what intelligence is.
well, I'll give you a personal example of being not shown up, but I realized a guy is a lot smarter than I thought he was. Those guys, and it's Ed Muzzy. I don't know if you read Ed Muzzy.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a father of one of Sam's classmates. He's since
Right.
passed away. Great guy, but he did some flat work. He's the one that poured the concrete out back of the
Right.
house,
Right.
and so when he was doing an estimate, he just took measurements. Right. I mean,
Hmm.
this is not complicated math. I could do it on paper, but he literally calculated the amount of the volume of the concrete needed for an irregular shape. There's the one rectangular shape, or maybe it's a square, and then there's an irregular shape. He did it all in his head in like 10 seconds.
Yeah.
And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. He's like, well, let me double check. And then he wrote it out and he showed it to me. I'm like, it was amazing. Now he was a really smart guy,
Hmm.
but he was, well, he's a cattle, he raised cattle, and he had a concrete business, and he's rough around the edges.
Right.
Super sweet guy. I mean, if you saw him, you'd think, I don't want to mess with that guy. He was big, and he looked like he would be mean, but he was like the nicest guy I've ever met, and super smart and
Yeah.
super knowledgeable. He was quiet, but if you got to talking to him, he knew a lot about history and about politics. I mean, he was a really, really smart guy, and well informed, although not, I don't think he went to college. I think he just went to work.
Right.
But I can't say I was humble because I already knew he was smart, but I was just really impressed. And you would never anticipate that from his appearance, his physical
Right.
appearance. And I'm a lawyer,
Right.
whatever.
Yes.
But I'm amazed by people's intelligence. And also that I'm amazed on the other side that people I think I should be smart. Like, oh my God, what what happened to you? Did you
Right.
have an injury? Like, have you always been like this? That
Hmm.
doesn't even make sense. And you're a judge? Ooh, yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
that's funny.
Moving along.
Yes. All
I'll
right.
write your names on that one.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts?
No, I don't think I was just about to ask you the same thing.
I'll beat you to the punch.
No. All right. Well, this has been season 12, episode 9 of Unlimited Opinions. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter at ULMTD Opinions. I've been Adam Bishop.
Still Mark Bishop.